oftentimes when we're embarking on something really big, it can feel overwhelming in terms of there's so much to do. How can we possibly do all the things that we need to do? And that can create what's often known as analysis paralysis, and it can be debilitating. We basically just become so overwhelmed by the volume of things that we need to do as we set out in this journey that we do nothing. And I think that's probably the worst thing that can happen. I'm very much of the mindset that it's better to do something, even if it's done in a mediocre way, than to do nothing in hopes that we'll do something extraordinary. And part of that is sort of rooted in this space of iteration. It's through the reps, it's through the practice, it's through the act of doing that I think we often get much better at things. And so the idea that we should wait until we are outstanding before we embark on something, well, we might actually never get to the point to where we do something if we follow that approach. And so I think, as I mentioned in one of the earlier podcasts, when I first started working on Nautica, I was really unqualified to start working on Nautica. And it wasn't until I had been doing it for several years did I start to feel like, oh, I actually maybe sort of know what I'm doing now. And similarly, when I started teaching at the university, especially my graduate level machine programming course, I also felt that I was underqualified to be presenting and teaching this to these very advanced students that I felt like they probably knew much more than I did. And I'm perpetually surprised by how much they know, and it's sort of reinforced every year. I teach mostly just in the fall quarter, although that may change, but yeah, mostly just the autumn quarter. And every year I run into these incredible students that I learn a huge amount from. And while I think that I'm getting better, the further I go in life, I think the more excited I become to actually not be sort of at the top of the hill. And I think this can be a little bit hard of a thing to understand when maybe you're first starting out in life and you're trying to have these accomplishments. Because I think it makes sense when you're earlier in life and you're trying to get your footing. It's sort of your sea legs. And so, to be clear, I don't think that you shouldn't want that as you explore whatever it is you're exploring in life. I think you should strive to get these accomplishments daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. And I do think that as you achieve more and you build a larger body of evidence of your accomplishments, you naturally become sort of more confident and more comfortable. But there's another side to this, and this was something that was maybe a bit shocking to me when I first started running into this. And I think maybe when I got through the first sort of stable version of Nautica, it happened. And then when I completed my doctorate, it happened. And then when I think, was running my own research lab, and became a principal scientist at Intel Labs, it happened. And what happened in all three of those cases is I actually got a large sense of depression that I had been striving toward these goals, and I'm, very goal driven. I blame my mom for that. She used to have these things, these goals. I mean, huge love for my mom. She's amazing. I'm only joking that I blame her. I love that she instilled this drive in me. But there is potentially, I think, a danger in that if you become so focused on outcomes, it's really easy, I think, to forget to enjoy the journey. And the real danger, I think, is if you live like this, where you're fully outcome driven, once you achieve these outcomes, and many people that I know that are very outcome driven tend to be highly ambitious, very motivated people, they, I think, can experience this more because they tend to achieve what they're setting out to achieve. And the outcome then is, what next? What do I do now? Especially when the goals are really large. So Nautica, when I first got to the point where it was like, okay, this is stable and it works, and I feel like I've achieved what I've set out to do, that was only after I'd been doing it for maybe 6 to 8 years. So that's a large chunk of my life on a single thing that when I was first doing this, I sort of thought, I don't know if I'll ever achieve this. And so this was part of the reason why I went to grad school, is I realized that I had done this and I felt a strong sense of accomplishment, but I also felt a strong sense of emptiness. This, like, what next kind of thing. And it created like a large degree of sort of panic and anxiety. And, like I was saying, this depression of I don't know what to do with my life, which probably sounds very strange, given that I think most people might think when you do something as big as, writing millions of lines of code, there would be this big party and celebration of, let's all congratulate me on how amazing I am. And it wasn't that at all. It was like the opposite. Is I felt lost and directionless, very confused. It wasn't sort of a great period. So then I realized that grad school would be my next focus, and I started again and, plan from day one, get my PhD. And just to be clear, the goal for my PhD is I'd been in industry for 6 to 8 years, something like that. And I'd been working my full-time job, and then I was doing Nautica. And what I realized is that just sort of doing engineering work, while I found it valuable, I wanted to go further. I wanted to sort of do more than kind of build features for maybe someone else's program or fix bugs. And I don't mean that in an arrogant way. I mean that in, it just felt like I could do more. And again, I'm very career driven and very interested in advancing science and technology. And so this is where I like to spend my time, right? I'm recording this podcast. It's Saturday night. I'm chilling with my doggy over here. Hey, buddy. Yeah, he's just taking a nap. We cut his hair earlier today, or I cut his hair. He basically did nothing except sort of enjoy the hour-long massage. And thankfully this time I didn't accidentally clip them. I think I did that the last time. Felt so bad. Anyway, so given that I'm just very driven on these technical things, it dawned on me that, oh, grad school could be a good thing. And in order for me to do more than just build simple software programs, I started to have these ideas that I want to do research. I want to really understand science and figure out how things really work. And then I want to just do research. And it occurred to me, my ex-wife, my wife at the time, I'm trying to figure out if she was already a professor, but minimally she was completing her PhD, and we had spoken about this, and she was saying that if I really wanted to do research, having a PhD is probably going to make it much easier for me to do this. And at this point, she kind of knows that I'm a pretty crazy guy, and so she was encouraging me, like, get your PhD, and then you can get funded for your research and do these kind of cool things. And I contemplated, and I realized that, I thought she was right. So I started on this path, and I spent the next 7 years or so of my life committed to this, and then I accomplished it. And keep in mind, the PhD path was notably more challenging, I think, than Nautica, in that sort of each time it's like I became more knowledgeable and experienced in these things, but I kept trying to do more. So I think the pain that I had was pretty much consistent. And by the way, I'm a huge advocate of pain, good pain, suffering pain, where we're challenging ourselves to be better. I think this is one of the greatest gifts that we can give ourselves. Because I feel like oftentimes this is the cost of living a life of meaning. So I have strong opinions about being motivated to have meaning. Oh, here it is. Yeah, this one. Aim for meaningfulness, not happiness. I could easily talk about this for days on end, but we'll save that for next time. So I'm embarking on this 7-year journey, and it's really hard, and notably harder than Nautica, but because I've leveled up, it's probably the same level of pain, but I'm experiencing all kinds of new challenges. I've never done research papers before. I don't think I realized how terrible of a writer I was. In fact, I know that I didn't, because as we talked about in one of the other podcasts, this was one of the hardest things for me to realize and learn. And it probably should have been obvious to me, but I think I had some insecurity that I wasn't technically advanced enough. And so I kept thinking the reason why my papers were being rejected was because I wasn't technically sophisticated enough. And it wasn't until I think Jeremy and Manish sat me down and said, no, your ideas are fantastic. The systems that you're building are amazing. You just really are awful at explaining things to people so they're properly compelled. And truthfully, I think a lot of technologists might suffer from this, that this is why I have this whole focus on communication, because it tends to be the case that I will end up working people that are wildly technically advanced, like my co-founder, Urs, who's easily one of the best coders I've ever met in my life. I mean, it's it's incredible watching him code. And yeah, he's an amazing one-off. But I do think that one of the things that he could potentially enhance is some of his communication skills. That I don't think that his intention is ever to be grumpy or punchy or kind of rub people the wrong way. But I think sometimes he may be so focused on the technical things that he kind of skips to the end where he's someone that I've worked with for 20 plus years, and obviously a huge admiration for him. Otherwise, I don't think that I would have founded Merly with him as my co-founder, and him being our chief engineer and chief architect. But I think that it's very easy for hyper intelligent people that are technologists to kind of make the assumption everyone knows what they know, and they don't necessarily need to explain the why something needs to work the way that it does. And this was my biggest struggle, is I didn't realize in my papers I needed to explain why I was designing systems the way they did, why the prior work designed things the way they did, and why that potentially is no longer sufficient given advances in technology. So anyway, this piece was also an amazing experience, and there was a point where I really thought that I wasn't going to get through my doctorate because I was having a really hard time getting papers published in tier 1 venues. And thankfully, I had really good mentors that encouraged me not to give up and just keep pushing. And I finally was able to sort of cross that threshold and finish my PhD. And like what I experienced before with Nautica, I now was having a repeat of this really intense depression, this sort of like, oh gosh, what do I do now? I've created this company that was far more successful than I had originally ever thought it would be. It's generating revenue, that kind of stuff. Now I've completed my PhD and I have these tier 1 publications. I had just landed my research scientist job at Intel Labs, and I was just wildly confused about life. I really was going into this free fall, which again probably sounds very strange given that I think most people looking at my life would assume, oh, Goju's just knocking these things out of the park. He probably sits around and just thinks about how amazing he is. And I was literally the opposite. I felt like I had sort of no direction in life. And I remember I relocated to Silicon Valley, and I would walk around the Intel campus multiple times during the week and just try to find direction, try to figure out what is it that I want to do. Where do I go? What is the purpose of life, kind of thing. So anyway, along that path, I got challenged by some of my Intel Labs coworkers on various things that they shared were really challenging things for anyone to achieve at Intel Labs. And given that they were far more senior than me, I then decided, oh, this is my thing. I need goals. I need these really hard goals. And so I set these really challenging goals for Intel Labs, things that, again, I fully expected I would never achieve. And at this point, I was sort of learning about setting these goals that are out of reach, or so I thought. And then 10 years later, all 3 of those goals, which I won't mention, but I had sort of achieved these three things. But this time, what was different is I had gone through these states of depression, and I was pretty sure I knew that what was coming, that I was going to experience this again, and I was in front of it this time. And I think I definitely started to head down this path of, okay, what do I do now? But because I had experienced this before, what I had sort of mentally noted is when I accomplish these things that I haven't yet, what I'm going to do next are these things, and one of those things was to run this course, a graduate level course for machine programming, which was a really interesting undertaking, especially the bar that I was trying to set for myself. Because I was at the time, I think I was an adjunct prof at University of Pennsylvania, and I wanted to kind of push myself even more. And then the other part is I thought I'm gonna create a machine programming startup, and then I'm gonna make that machine programming startup's goals so audacious that I won't, in any stretch of the imagination in any universe, be able to achieve the things that I'm setting out to do, which is get to Mars. And I'm fairly certain that no matter how hard we work, we're not going to achieve that in my lifetime. And I really hope I'm right, because as we joke at Merle that we're actually going to in my lifetime have our spaceships and we're heading to Mars, and then I'm gonna die on the observation lounge because at that point someone else is gonna be flying the ship. I'll be far too old, but I'll go into cardiac arrest because I'm about ready to go through this next level of depression and don't know what to do next. So the point of all of this is, as we set these goals for ourselves, one of the things that I really tried to shift to these days is to really enjoy the journey. That while I think it's good to have certain outcomes that you're targeting, things that they're sort of keeping you up at night or getting you out of bed in the morning. They're things that you want to achieve to make things better, make yourself better, make the world better, make your friends and family lives better. I think that's super important. But make sure that you are sort of accepting of who you are, that you're going to strive for more, but who you are today is perfectly acceptable. That you have enough data of all the things that you've achieved, and you really need to enjoy the journey, because as I jokingly say with the people that I mentor and my colleagues at Merle, is we all know how this story ends. And so why would we race to the end of our story? Because we're all going to the same destination. And it's a destination that I think none of us may be super eager to reach, myself included. And this, I think, has reframed things quite a bit. And it actually lends to one of the, what's going on here? Okay, come on. This one right here. Compare yourself to yesterday's you. That I think it's very easy to compare ourselves to others and say, I want to be as good as this person, or I really admire this person and I would like to achieve what they've achieved, or something of that nature. And I think that it's good to have heroes. It's good to have people that we admire. But I think it's very dangerous to get into this comparison game, especially if it becomes a bean counter type of thing. And really, that in my mind, the core issue with this is everyone's lives are different. And so, for example, I was pretty much kind of like a juvenile delinquent when I was in my teenage years. I was really not, you know, maybe this is why I like Asmund Gold so much, is I feel like Asmund and I have a similar kind of younger years. I was really not super great as a person. I didn't really care about education, and I didn't always make the best life decisions. I was just a screw up. I mean, my high school GPA was a 2.7, right? I was a solid C student. Um, and it wasn't until my collegiate days, specifically once I started working on Notica and grad school, that things really started to, I think, change. And so why is this relevant? Well, I'm a bit of a, as people have told me, I am a bit unorthodox in my career trajectory. My path is a bit unusual. I'm a late bloomer, as they say sometimes. And so if I were to compare myself to people that are my same age when I was in my 30s, or 20s, these people have a 10x eclipsed me. And if you take that mentality, it's very easy to just feel defeated. That, oh, well, you'll never be as amazing as this other person, so you just shouldn't even try. And I think that's a really terrible mindset, is that, again, we all are following our own path in life. And where we are today is largely predicated by our own story. All of the individual challenges and accomplishments and gifts and disadvantages that we've had. And so comparing yourself with someone that's not you, I think is sort of a recipe for disaster. I think it's not a good thing to do, not because you don't want to have heroes and people that you look up to, but because we don't know what the other person's life looks like. And on top of that, I think that it's bad if you do it for people that you look up to. I think it's equally as bad if you do it for people that you don't look up to, because it becomes very easy to become judgmental of other people that haven't achieved what you've achieved if you are doing this comparison metric, like, oh, well, you didn't get your PhD from Harvard, or you haven't won the Turing Award like I have, and this kind of thing. And it's not super great. People, I think, can be amazing for a variety of different reasons, and we should view them through the lens of what kind of amazing things they offer, not try to sort of project our value system on them. And in fact, for my research lab and the university stuff and the company, this is very much what I try to do with the people that I work with, is I try to consider who they are. I try to understand what are their strengths, what are the things that it seems like they really excel in. And on top of that, I'll definitely try to look for the areas where they can improve. And in fact, anyone that works with me knows one of the biggest things I focus on is a growth mindset. And this goes back to the small steps every day, small footsteps every day. This is another way of saying grow every day. And I think this is probably one of the most important principles to live by, because I think it changes, you can see that you're trying to conquer this mountain, or run this marathon, or do something, write a 12 book series, this type of thing. But you never really get so caught up on the audacity of the big things that you become incapable of moving forward, because every day you make small footsteps forward. You chip away at things. And honestly, all of the things that I've achieved in my life that I think other people have told me, wow, how are you able to do this? How did you get here? Or how did this? And it's pretty much the same story, is I just persevere. I just like doing this podcast tonight. I'm a little tired. Taylor is off doing other things. He's actually working on probably more important stuff, so he's definitely not taking the night off. But it'd be very easy for me to say, okay, I'm just gonna take a night off and rest. And I think that given the week that we've had, it'd be very easy for me to do that. But I really do try to follow this philosophy of the small footsteps every day. It gives me a certain sense of accomplishment that makes all of the kind of the bad stuff, the struggles, the challenges, the difficulties, it makes them all seem so much smaller. And, they say, like, one of the things that you can do that's really helpful for you becoming a successful person or able to start achieving your goals are very simple things, like make your bed in the morning, or do some exercise, or empty the dishwasher. Like very little things that have sort of seemingly no consequence. And I really subscribe to this. And I think the reason why it's so effective is those small pieces of this satisfaction that you get, or at least I get, from accomplishing things in this piecewise fashion. Small stuff. Like today, I actually did sort of clean the house a little bit, and I cut Merle's hair, and I think I ran the dishwasher. These things that might seem silly, I think we make a mental note that I'm moving forward, and it gives us this positive sense of things where your whole world can feel kind of like it's spiraling out of control. This is not happening, and that's not happening, and you didn't get the job that you wanted, or you didn't get to the school you wanted, or the code that you're writing doesn't work, and you can just end up really sort of beating yourself up pretty unfairly. And I find that if you follow the small footsteps every day, all of the failures that you may be going through, and by the way, I think that failures are probably one of the best things that can happen to us, because when we fail, those are usually the moments that we're learning the most. This can be very hard to really lean into, to really believe. But I do really think that this is the stuff we should be leaning into. We should be seeking out, that if all we do are things that we're successful in, there's a really good chance, I think, that we're probably not pushing ourselves as hard as we can, that we might want to push ourselves. We might want to aim a little bit higher and endure some failures. In fact, when I was at Intel Labs, one of my mentors, Rich Ulig, he would talk about how if the labs ever got to a point where all research efforts for the year were successful, we have probably failed. And his point was, we should never be 100% successful. Because if we are, it means that we're probably not taking enough risks. We're probably not pushing the boundaries as much as we should. And so when I suffer these failures, and believe me, I'm suffering these failures on a daily basis, I'm reminded of this is good, because if I was just playing it safe, I would just be succeeding in all these things. And I don't know that that's going to help me grow and give my life the meaningfulness that I really want it to have, as we have on this list. So, however, it's nuanced, right? And if all you do is fail, if the only thing that you experience is this ongoing sense of sort of suffering and inability to complete some of these important things that you set your mind out to, it may be very easy to become wildly disheartened and give up. And that's why I think the small footsteps every day can be really helpful, is that they give you something to, I can achieve this. And even if my papers are getting rejected for grad school, I can go do some exercise. I can walk the dog. I can send those emails that I needed to send. I can write 50 lines of code, or I can code for a few hours. These types of things, I think, make the challenge and the intensity of working in really hard spaces where you are likely to undergo a significant amount of failures, like trying to run like a VC-backed company in Silicon Valley, and you're talking to dozens or hundreds of VCs, and each one of them is basically telling you that you're the stupidest person they've spoken to. This can really start to erode away at people's confidence, even the people that are the most confident that are out there. I know that it certainly had its impact on me in the early days of Merly. So, as per normal, I just spent basically 50 minutes talking just about this one trait, although sort of meandered into some of these others. So I think maybe I'll wrap this up, and we'll talk about these other ones next time.